was the last time the brake came off?
When it was put on.
This bike has not seen a service in over 10,000?
Let's go with 12.
12,000 miles of riding, so is in dire need of some TLC. So we are going to give this bike a full nut and bolt service, leaving no stone unturned.
The first thing we'll do is put a chain checker on it. Depending on how warm the chain is, to give you a good indication of how warm the drive chain is.
So how's it looking?
Worn. I think that word's going to be used quite a lot with this bike. It's going to be worn.
So Ed, what is this?
So this is Blanche.
Lovely.
Blanche is a 2007 Specialized Tarmac Expert.
Yep.
I actually rescued the frame from a skip. Complete waste. The frame still had like a sort of old Tegra group set on it. It was actually rideable, like I rode it how it was for a bit, but it needed a bit of work. So I was like, well, rather than just tweak a few bits, why don't I just sort of completely strip it bare and start from scratch, which is what I did. Obviously went for a really elaborate paint job.
Yeah.
And then just spec'd it from the bottom up based on what I want to do with it. My main thing is cycle touring. It is technically a racing bike, but with modern kind of luggage solutions and lots of bungee cords, it actually has served me absolutely fine as a touring bike. It's done John O'Groats to Land's End, it's done the north of France to the south of France, done the south of France to the north of Spain. Most recently, it's done a trip around Switzerland, Austria and Germany. Fully laden, so you know, the bike probably ends up weighing about 20 kilos with all the stuff on it. So it's done really well. It's even done some gravel, not voluntarily. Komoot has weird ideas sometimes. If it just had fat tyres, I don't think I'd ever need to ride another bike, frankly.
Wow. How have we ended up in the situation where, you know, it's covered, as you said, 12,000 miles and it's not had a service? Like, to be honest, impressive.
So it hasn't seen a formal service.
Yep.
Parts have been swapped out. I haven't been running the same brake pads for the last, 10 to 12,000 miles, all the same tyres. But in terms of like the drivetrain, for example, it's the same chain, it's the same cassette, same chain rings. Everything else is as it was when I first had it built up. And to be honest, I haven't serviced it because nothing has gone wrong with it. I'm not a racer. I don't require my drivetrain to be like 100% efficient or as close as I can get it. I just need it to actually function, and it does. I've never dropped a chain. The chain is still there. It's never snapped. So far, I've been pretty lucky, and I've, let's say, managed to get away with it.
If it's 0.4 millimetres of wear, it's normally just a chain. 0.8 mil is chain and cassette. In this case, it is 1.58. Yeah, your jockey wheels are worn out as well. Look at the wear on the rim. Woo! Yeah, rim brake bikes, always check the rims. Headset, yeah, that's pretty rough and really loose. We need to look at that. We've got a little bit of wear here where the cable's been rubbing on top of the fork crown. So again, we need to look at that. Bit of ribbon here, hold the bottle cage on. Probably not ideal when you're riding along to have a little bit of ribbon on there. It's quite ingenious what we've used here to hold this bottle cage in place, but I think we need to drill that out and put a new rib nut in there. Bar tape, I think we can do better than that. I think it's had better days. We'll throw some new bar tape on there. We'll try to make it look like it's had some love. Just give it a bit of a cuddle. When was the last time the brake came off?
When it was put on.
That might have to stay in place. Those adjusters don't work. I think we'll just leave them be. At the moment, the cables are going to go in there, all right? We're going to cut the ribbon. Ta-da! We'll give that back to the customer, all right? It might mean a lot to them. We've got to take the bottom bracket out now, which is going to be fun. Putting a bag on that tool like that will save the anodising. Kind of no grease on there really. I'd say to anyone, change bar tape regularly. It's a bit of a hive for bacteria and some funky stuff goes on there. Oh, a little bit more rust there. Got a little bit of a ring of death there. Ring of death is where the headset's been ridden loose. That wears up and down the fork. Eventually just erodes through the carbon. All right, so we've got a fork here with a front brake that's seized on it, and we've got a fork on it with a ring of death.
Great.
We're doing well here, aren't we? There you go. Dead. That's what it's supposed to do, all right, with a bearing in it. And that one's got no bearing in it. Beauty.
Now, Ed, I can't help but notice that there's some holes in your frame. I believe there used to be some Zert inserts in there.
They did. They look ridiculous, so I removed them. Anyway, holes are trendy these days. Like Stripdown, everyone's putting holes in the frame. So, you know, trendsetter.
Oh look, the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket that's never been faced in its life. Well, it probably was faced once upon a time, but it's obviously covered in paint. First thing you need to do is just chase those threads through, make sure the paint I need to try it, so it's left in the bottom bracket is removed before you even try to face it. So just doing that, lots of cutting fluid on there as well. Make sure those threads are nicely cut, get them nice and straight, and obviously what that does is it keeps the threads straight and makes sure when you put the cups into the frame, they're running parallel to one another. And obviously that's all the muck that we've taken off out of the frame there, which is obviously quite a lot. And then once you've got that out of there, then you can start facing it, which is quite therapeutic, to be honest with you.
And the lot came off this frame because essentially it was just loads and loads of paint.
Yeah, it's basically no masking tape, I think it was ever met this frame. And I think it was just left of that. So it's obviously good to get that off. You're left with a nice, smooth face. So when you wind that bottom bracket into the frame, you know that it's sitting there parallel, and it just means that it's not gonna creak and it's not gonna move. So now we have a nicely faced and chased bottom bracket.
Talk us through how you do this, because this isn't a job that you'd often do in the workshop, is it?
It's a job that a lot of people don't like doing, to be honest with you, because obviously you're using a lovely sharp hacksaw blade there next to a bit of carbon fibre. Yeah, it's getting an old rivet out of a frame. Obviously you can't thread into something that's carbon fibre tube, so you have to use an insert. So yeah, just put a bit of tape around it just to trying to stop you cutting into the frame. Obviously you are always going to get a little bit, you might just catch the frame slightly, but...
The bottle cage sits on top of that as well.
Exactly, and it's better that you have a bottle cage that's securely fastened to your bike rather than being held on with a bit of ribbon.
Once you've taken it and cut it out, what do you then do from there? Is it literally just a case of punching a new one in?
Yeah, there's a special tool for it, and they're all different sizes. You have a different size stud on there, and you just choose one. You just get a rib nut out of the drawer, and you just thread it onto the tool, set the tool, and just press it in. It's really quite straightforward. So what we'll do is obviously wipe the bike down, give it a clean, and give it a polish, and kind of look over the bike quite closely. You're looking for cracks or marks or tyre rub, for instance, where people have broken a spoke and the tyre rubbed against the inside of the chainstay. That's quite common. Anything that needs to be repaired by any kind of carbon fibre specialist, this is the time to do it when the frame's nice and clean. When you wash all this stuff down, it is actually very therapeutic. Having nice, clean, degreased parts on your bike, it just straight away, you feel like you're actually making inroads into this and actually making this bike, after 10,000s of never seeing a parts washer, it actually feels like you're getting somewhere with it. Also, headset needs to go in, using lots of lovely waterproof grease in there. Took the mindset out of it, Sam, which was that very early in conception of a integrated headset. That came out, and then Specialized, they said you can just basically just run those bearings directly into the frame. So it's gone from like a semi-integrated headset to an integrated headset.
Tell us a little bit more about the ring of death that you mentioned earlier on in the video. What's the process there? Because that seems pretty important to me.
So from a standpoint, that's a safety issue. Straight away, if that was in our normal workshop, that bike would get parked and nothing would get done on it until either a new fork had been found or the fork has been repaired. Which again brings you back to saying, people, service your bikes regularly. Servicing, it's a safety thing. Well, not only does your bike work better, but it's also a safety thing. And forks can fail. If you wear it through badly enough, it can fail. So I'd recommend it to it on that one. Go and get it repaired. Throwing that bottom bracket in, lots of grease evident on that one. Probably not going to come out in 10,000 miles, so we're going to have a decent grease in there. It's going to last for about that time. So yeah, throw the bottom bracket in, bag goes over the cup again, stops it getting witness marked by that lovely Abbey tool, 40 newton meters, and yeah, you can see a little bit of grease evident in there, and then basically squish it, put the bottom bracket back in. Always a bit horrible putting these bearings on with a hammer but that is the correct tool. If people are looking at it going, he's using a hammer on this. Again, lots of grease evident. If it moves, grease it. If it doesn't move, it's because you haven't greased it.
There you go, so that's 10,000 miles that grease is going to last. Lovely little bit of red military grease in there, probably use it on tanks, so it's not too out of place there, is it, on that one? So throw it in there, look, get that hearth coupling lined up. 46 newton meters on that one.
Look at that though.
Look at that Campag spinning. It's silver, it's clean, it's spinning. It's not ceramic, but it's loving life there. Loving life more than it was earlier in the day.
Durable and versatile, that's what we want.
Absolutely. And then throw the front mech on. There you go, and that's the proper tool. Which probably a lot of people don't realise that exists, that Campag tool. And they do too. But it's a really good tool actually, the Campag one. Drop it on, drop the front mech on it, gets it perfect. Perfect height and everything. Rear brake now, like in case of nut, again, bit of grease on there. The front brake, obviously, we'll have to address that when the fork comes back. We'll end up drilling that one off probably and putting your front brake on it. But look, nice and shiny, and as they were. With those brakes as well, I normally drop a little bit of oil just on any of the pivots and the cams just to stop them getting seized up. A little bit of time spent when you're doing stuff, when you're servicing, can save you hours. Like 2 minutes here, a minute there, could save you hours going forward, trying to get things undone and trying to get things off bikes because you didn't do it first time around. If you're going to do a job, do it right first time around, or don't bother doing it at all. You can see here, new set of wheels being put on this bike. It's a wearable component, a rim brake wheel. One of the beauties from a mechanic's point of view is that disc brakes have stopped people wearing their rims out on their bikes. Nothing wrong with rim brakes. I've still got bikes with rim brakes on them, but just check them regularly, for any wear. Good little trick you can do is put a scalpel blade on the rim and actually see if it's concaved or not. If you've got rim brakes, take care of them, look after them. The wear on the rims can be drastically increased by people not changing their brake pads regularly. So what will happen, little bits of aluminium come off the rim, get impregnated into the brake pads, and you're basically putting aluminium on aluminium, and that's why you prematurely wear your rims out. So it is, again, going back to servicing your bike regularly, one thing you can do, something you can do at home, is just take your wheels out, make sure your wheels are clean, and actually look at the brake pads, and any little aluminium bits of fleck in your brake pads, just pick them out with a pick or a scalpel blade. Again, you're stopping that from wearing the rims out. New cassette going on, old cassette, chain was like atomized, cassette's going to be atomized, that's obviously off it goes to be made into a cat food tin or something like that. But yeah, there was no coming back for that. So again, we go back to it, check your chain regularly, because if you keep your chain on top of your chain wear, you don't really ever have to wear chain rings, replace your chain rings or your cassette. So just buy a chain checker and check your chain regularly at home.
And so that cassette got 40 Newton meters when it was fitted.
Yeah.
And then next thing it was about was just getting those wheels in the frame, wasn't it?
Yeah, grease the quick releases, helps stop creaking and stops the quick releases getting stuck. And also putting the springs on the end of your quick releases the right way around always goes like that. It goes pointy end towards the hub. So have you seen that? That's my little diagram there, little pointy end towards the hub. All right, and that goes on both sides. Don't cover your axles over because then your wheel doesn't sit in straight. And then your tyre wears on the rear chainstay and then you blow a rim out and then you wear through your frame and then it's all broken. Right, one thing, there's a mechanic that drives me mental, hanger alignment tool. New bikes, any bike that gets built, any bike that gets serviced, check the rear derailleur hanger. If the rear derailleur hanger isn't straight, your gears aren't really going to work properly. So all I'm doing there is I'm making sure that the hanger is straight. And what I use the valve as a point of reference. Because if your wheel is slightly buckled, if you just go around the wheel normally, you can be out slightly. So I'm always on this. You just go around and make sure that hanger is completely straight. Because what it does, it makes sure the jockey boards are completely parallel to each sprocket, so each gear change is completely precise. Incredibly important to do it. Right, the dreaded hood's coming off. Oh my God.
These weren't looking good, were they?
No. And it goes back to what I said, like hive of bacteria, like on bar tape, and then you got a hive of bacteria on a brake hood as well. If you put new tape on it, put new hoods on it, makes the bike feel £1,000,000. I mean, changing your brake hoods, it's quite in depth. You obviously got to take all the cabling off it, and it's not easy to do. Getting the old ones off is easy. Getting the new ones on, oh my goodness me. I mean, you can see some of my facial expressions there. I'm gurning a bit. Put a bit of hot water, and it just warms that rubber up. Just get them nice and pliable. Don't get them out like your cold garage. You're going to try to put them straight on because they're just going to rip. I took the bleeder blades out as well because it just means that the unit I'm trying to go over is smaller. And don't do it in situ. You've got to take your levers off the bike to do it properly. Putting cables in. This bike, the cable adjusters on the frame were completely seized. So with this one, we utilised the cable adjuster on the rear derailleur, and now I'll just put an inline cable adjuster for the front mech, just to make sure we have it dialed in so that there is some adjustment out there. So inline cable adjuster in there, gives a little bit of adjustment going forward, and I have put some little rubber things on the cables there, sir.
Talk us through why, because that frame, you can see some rub marks there, can't you?
Yeah, on top of the forks. The actual outer, the gear out, can be quite abrasive and can cut into frames quite horribly, and especially in my paint. Especially on new bikes, people they don't always put helicopter tape on top of it, and I like putting these little rubber things on there because it does two things. A, it stops the cables from rubbing into the paintwork and making the frame look a bit tired prematurely, but also stops the cables from rattling on top of the paintwork as well.
Yeah.
So it keeps the whole thing quiet.
I think mechanics will rejoice with a bike like this because it is so beautifully simple to cable up and do, isn't it?
External cables,
Yeah.
external bottom bracket. There's a lot to be said for it. Again, that's a whole other argument, isn't it? Cam bag chains, read the manual.
Why?
Because you've got to put them on in a certain way. You have to pin the chain in a certain manner. And there's 11-speed tool, 12 and 30-speed tool. Cam bag chains are actually sided, and a lot of people don't realise this. If you look on them, there's actually an instruction manual. No one ever reads the instruction manual. And on the actual outer plate on cam pad, there's a code on it. That always faces outwards. It's because you push the pin in from the other way. So when you chamfer it over on the other side, which you'll see in the video me do in a minute, it means that the chain is actually closed over, and then it fits on the outer plate properly. And the amount of 11-speed and 12-speed chains I've seen come in the workshop, and you clean it and they're either back to front, or it's not been peened, or they've got a Shimano quick link in them, or they've got, even better, got a Shimano quick link in them. No, do it properly, read the manual. Rear mech went on, pull the cable through, and I always cut it there and then, actually, before I start setting the gears up. Make sure that I pull the cable through, pre-tension the cable. The beauty of the cable is external on the frame, so I would have pinched that up, done it up, and actually then pulled on the cable, just to stretch the cable in. And when people say stretch the cable, you're not actually stretching it. What you do is you're bedding the cable inner into the outer, and trying to do that as much as you can. Cut the cable, put the crimp on it then, because the amount of people I've seen setting up gears, the inner cable starts flapping about, goes in the rear wheel, gets pulled up in the jockey wheel, you've got to pull it all on. So just pre-tension it, pre-stretch it, cut it, set it, and make sure that the limit screws are set. So even before I set the gears up, I always push the rear mech onto the lowest sprocket and make sure the limit screw is set before you start going through the gears and having to grab it and stop this rear wheel from ripping the rear mech off. And this one here would have put new jockey wheels in it as well, because these jockey wheels on the mech originally were absolutely trashed. Again, another thing to look for, there is uppers and lower jockey wheels, make sure they're around the right way and make sure they are not worn out. Again, won't make your gears work very well. And the other thing I've put on there on that crank arm, you can see, is a dummy pedal, because this bike came in with no pedals on it. So don't put your finger in the hole and start moving your cranks around like that.
We've all been guilty of it.
We've all been guilty of it, because I like my fingers. I like them to be attached. And I've seen mechanics do it on fixed wheels before, which is really frightening. So yeah, just put a dummy pedal in it, or just put a pedal on a bike and set the gears up like that properly. Don't put your finger in the hole and move around. It's horrible. I see it all the time. Don't do it. On the home straight here, look, throwing that bar tape on there, trying to get it nice and neat. Now, I am old school. I can't figure eight bar tape. I can't do it. So I still cheat tape. The cheat tape is the bit that goes around the back, basically. And all bar tape used to come with it. And you just fit it around the back there. As I said, like, cam bag levers are quite long, so you still, even if you figure out, you still have to use it. But that is what the cheat tape is. A little bit of finishing tape going on that bar, nice and tight. Going the right way. And then that's the bar and plug. And then popping it in there. That is it. Left and right, that is it. End of job. All done.
Well, there we have it. After a few pretty intense hours of getting this bike serviced, Blanche is looking absolutely spectacular. Ed, what are your thoughts? What are your impressions?
Yeah, it's a transformation, isn't it?
It is.
It's an interesting one, because if you were to just look at it now opposed to before, it kind of looks like it's just had a really good clean, which it has.
Yeah.
And, you know, some new bar tape and a few other bits. But as we learned from a thorough inspection and from having the bike completely taken apart, there was so much which needed doing, which, you know, you wouldn't otherwise see. You wouldn't even necessarily know is wrong with the bike.
Well, exactly.
But yeah, can't help but feel like a little bit I know, peculiar when you're hearing phrases like ring of death. Like
Yeah.
I just sort of have images of myself going down, you know, mountain passes with all the luggage on at any given moment. It could have, you know,
Yeah.
given in, and I don't know. I feel like I've been sort of like playing Russian roulette with myself for, you know, a very long time without even realising it.
Whoa, that's a good way to put it, to be honest.
Thanks.
So this hasn't been a like-for-like service. There have been changes here. Those key changes were what exactly?
It's comparable to how it was before. Like, I don't think we'll have saved any weight or anything like that. It hasn't had any upgrades as such. So it did have the Hunt wheels, and now we've got these Misha.
Yep, Miche.
Miche wheels, which actually I think kind of goes better with the bike because Italian wheels, Italian group set.
There we go.
It's quite nice. Also, to be fair, like as nice as the Hunt wheels were, very noisy free hub, and when descending, it's quite like ostentatious, and I do get people sort of turning around thinking, you know, who's this idiot? Probably expecting to see someone really pro, and then it's just me. So, you know, I'm happy to be a bit more under the radar with these. Also the tyres, so before we had some really beaten up Goodyear Eagle Sport, which, I mean, they've served me really well. They've probably done about 4,000 miles alone.
Yeah.
So now we've got the Schwalbe 365s, which are an all year round tyre. For the type of riding I do, obviously conditions vary quite a lot. It's good to just have something I can just leave on all year round, because let's face it, I don't even clean the bike. I'm not going to be like swapping the tyres out every couple of months. So that kind of kills two birds with one stone. Also, finally, some new hygienic handlebar tape. I've gone for a different colour this time. So I had the teal colour before, which I did really like. Thought I'd try brown. Now, it's really good quality tape, but I'm not entirely sure that I made the right choice going for brown tape with black kind of components. It's not really working for me. I think it would work with a brown saddle, but then I think that's just going a little bit too far down the sort of like classic retro look. So I might give that a rethink in another 12,000 miles when I actually change the bar tape.
I've got to say, this thing is gleaming. Looking at the components, it looks so much brighter and better. I'm going to be really interested to see how this actually feels like to ride comparatively to what it was like before.
Yeah, and unfortunately I haven't had a chance to take it out for a ride yet because, to be honest, I don't want to. Everything's absolutely immaculate. It's winter and I'll go for one ride and then it's all going to be like covered in mud.
Yeah. Now, I think there's one more reason, of course, why maybe you shouldn't ride this bike for a little longer, and it is because that fork is not safe to ride.
Yeah, all right, Mum. No, very true. The fork does need addressing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll go down the getting it serviced route. I think I'll hunt around and try and find a replacement.
Yeah.
As Dan said, finding a like-for-like replacement might be quite difficult, as the frame is now, I mean, it's getting on for 20 years old.
Yeah.
What I am thinking is trying to find a fork that would go on it that has a couple of eyelets, because then when I am touring, I can use it to attach stuff to the front of the bike. So that would be ideal.
Now, Ed, obviously this bike has been on so many adventures already. What's next?
So a few things. So I want to finally do a 200-mile ride. I was supposed to do one this year. It got rained off, and I'm a wimp, so I didn't want to do it in the rain.
Don't blame me.
I'm going to do north to south, Wales, and then back home again. So that'll be fun. And then the main one, I do a tour every year with my sister. Next year it's Croatia, through Slovenia, north of Italy. Going to do the Stelvio. So can't wait for that.
So, Ed, it sounds like you've got a bit of a baptism of fire planned with the rides you're planning with this bike.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that you're happy now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wasn't unhappy before, to be fair, but I'm a lot happier now. You know, I absolutely love this bike. It almost feels like a child of mine, the way I sort of like rescued it. A bit like an orphan. Maybe not orphan. As I said at the beginning, you know, I saved it from a skip. I kind of feel like I've rescued it, nurtured it, you know, back to health. Well, back to health now that it's been, you know, finally serviced. And I'll keep doing that as long as the frame holds out. Like, you know, there's nothing wrong with the frame. The frame suits me, so, you know, I'll keep it on life support until it literally just like falls apart.
So I'm very glad you're happy, but will this bike be seeing another service?
I mean, it will at some
No,
point.
it will see a service, okay? You will stay on top of it.
It'll get serviced when I get round to it.
It looks beautiful now.
It does,
and
yes.
it will stay like this, okay? Good. And everyone at home, make sure you service your bike. It is crucially important. Big thanks to Sigma Sports for helping make this video happen. But let me know down below, do you have a bike that hasn't seen a service in longer than 10,000 miles?